This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Moore. A few years back, I had the opportunity to go to Columbus, Ohio. Never been there before. And I was filming a documentary in southern Ohio, and that was essentially the closest place that I could fly into. And I got to tell you, I spent time there, and actually, I got to confess, I kind of really came to like the place. It was really kind of a cool place. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and the people that I met, places that I went out to eat, enjoyed it very much so. I could see how it'd be a very livable city. You know, you got the university there, and a lot of nightlife. But you know that over the past, I don't know, few days, a week, there's a case that has popped up there that has really troubled me. It's troubled me on many levels, and I'm going to get into that, I promise. But I think probably the most troubling thing about this is that as I speak right now, there is a monster out there that has committed a heinous crime, and that led to the deaths of two people. And it's not just the fact that a heinous crime has been committed. It was committed with little young children inside of the house. And yet this phantom still walks up and down the streets. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Dave, I got to tell you, I saw the images of this couple. Something that I haven't seen before in a case. You know, when they're doing the media does this reflective thing that they do with, you know, all of their cuts and everything, you know, when they're promoting a show about a horrible incident. They had these incredibly beautiful moving images of this couple's wedding.
Oh yeah.
And they're dancing around. You can kind of see the glow in their faces, you know, all those sorts of things. And it was quite touching. And I began to think about that couple. And, you know, on your wedding day, you're so very hopeful about the future that you have together. And to have something end in this kind of horror is quite shocking. And one of the reasons I wanted to hop on here with you, my friend, is because it's not just to talk about this case, but I think it's something that we have a voice. We need to remind people of it, and people need to be on the lookout, because whoever did this is pure evil. I mean, just absolute pure evil. I hope that they put a bag over this person really, really quick, because I'm concerned for the folks up in Columbus in that area of the country, because it's nasty, nasty business. Dave.
Talking about the murders of Spencer and Monique Tepe, and they were murdered December 30th, 2025. I'm saying that emphatically, as in, like, I know what actually happened. I don't. I'm only going by the information we've been given, and based on what we found, meaning police, investigators, what have you, that it's a good assumption to make that they died sometime between midnight and 9 a.m, probably much earlier than that, mainly because of, we've got a couple here who they've got, you know, you mentioned the video of the wedding.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about how B-roll video actually sometimes carries a story.
Yeah.
You'll see more when they've got wonderful video to share with it, because, you know, and that's what you've got. You've got the all-American couple. People are looking for, is there something here? Is there a string we can pull? Because Spencer and Monique Tepe are found murdered in their home. Their young children are located in the home uninjured. And Spencer is a dentist, and it's his boss who calls police.
Right.
And I found it fascinating that when he was asked about this, he said, you know, he couldn't reach Spencer. Spencer's always on time. He's that guy who is always on time. And that he found it even more troubling when he couldn't get up with Spencer. that was just, okay, I can't get up with Spencer. It was when he could not get up with Monique.
Yeah.
With Spencer's wife. That's when panic time, because that just doesn't happen. It's one of those things where, if I couldn't find Joe, I'd call Kim.
Right.
If I couldn't find Joe and Kim, I'd call Noah. If I can't find any one of you guys, I'm on my way to Jacksonville because there's a problem. And that's what happened here. He didn't show up at the dentist's office that morning. So they call. Neighbors are going by the house. And my gosh, Joseph Scott Morgan, when we actually hear the 911 calls and you've got people who can't get in, doors locked, nobody's answering the door, but we hear children.
Yep.
I cannot imagine what that must be like to an investigator, knowing something bad is behind this door and there's children in there.
Yeah. And, when do you cross that threshold? I think that you and I have talked many times over the years, Dave, about making entry into a residence. Mm-hmm. And it's a weird, it's kind of a weird thing. As far as when do the cops actually decide to make entry? When is it dictated? And I can guarantee you that from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, depending upon their SOP, mm-hmm. they will have, there'll be these slight little differences. You got to call a supervisor, or I'm sure that there are probably some agencies out there that say, don't you go through that door without a warrant.
Right.
Even if, and here's the thing about it, you got kids in there and you've got non-responsive, non-available adults. Oh, what a weird position to be in if you're a cop. And my understanding is that the police had actually gone out initially and reported that from an initial call that they didn't, and maybe I'm wrong about this, that they didn't see anything. They didn't make entry at that time. More people showed up, and that's when you actually hear these phone calls. And Dave, I swear I can hear in the background, I can hear these kids. Mm-hmm. And it's chilling, to think about, because now what we know, mm-hmm. Again, I always return back to this case. And I mentioned Columbus just a moment ago. You probably know where I'm going. Drifting back in time, I'm thinking about Piketon, where the little kid walks up to the door inside of the trailer, and, mommy and daddy are playing zombie. Mm-hmm. And, and I can't help myself, relative to that particular case. And I'm probably superimpose it on anything with a child in it now, because that was so over the top. You had kids in that case that were, infants that were covered in blood. And I think about this case, what have these kids borne witness to at this point in time? And I guess the bigger question is, why was no harm perpetrated on them? And that's, I think, to me, I don't know how you feel about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. That's a big insight to me.
Well, you know what, Joe? No threat. Yeah. I have to think, based on we know so little about this, okay? What we know is that Spencer Tepe is 37, Monique is 39, and they've got 2 kids.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what we know. We know that he is an upstanding dentist, well thought of in the community. It was his boss, the owner of the dental place, that called police.
From Florida, by the way.
Yeah. And because he didn't show up. He didn't show up for work, which, it's one of those things where, again, we have a standard operating procedure of life. I know what to expect. Can
I say something about dentists real quick?
Please.
Dentists tend to be, I think, more so than medical doctors. Dentists, in my mind, everyone I've ever worked with professionally, and there's been many, they're some of the most fastidious people that you ever, I don't know if it has to do with working in small spaces with tiny tools or whatever it is. They are very, very ordered. And I know that there are people out there saying, well, you don't know about the dentist office I work in, or, but you compare it and they are like right on time. And so that's a big, and the fact, I love the fact that you brought up that Monique, they could not reach her because she is the household manager for this family. She manages everything. And I'm sure that, I'm sure as what a lovely person he is, Spencer, he's probably super nerd. He probably is super focused as a practitioner on what he has to do. And she's kind of like, okay, honey, here's your job. Go do it. Let me turn the big dial on your back. Go get in the car. Here's coffee. God bless. You go on about it, that sort of thing. And managing, because I'm that way. You mentioned my wife. Kim is always saying, okay, you've got to be here at this time. You need to go, or whatever the case might be. And the fact that they cannot get her is a major problem. And it indicates to me as well, because the boss said, and this is something that kind of rings in my ears. She said the boss said, he said that it's one thing if you can't get Spencer. It's completely different if you cannot get Monique. Because apparently she would hop on the phone at any point in time. If somebody calls, she's Johnny on the spot. So, you couple that, and now what we know about these kids crying inside the house, Dave, it's just absolutely, just gut wrenching.
And the neighbors. Now, this is another part of this too, Joe. Get neighbors involved. I'm not the most social butterfly there is. Okay. I know my neighbors, but I tend to just kind of keep to myself. I like it that way. And
me too.
I would love to live down a 2-mile long driveway that's got a tunnel leading to my underground cave. Okay. But in this particular case, this was a family that was looked at with much favor by their neighbors. And it was neighbors who came over because they saw police show up. Hey, what's going on? You can't get up with them? What the heck? And when the police left, that's when the neighbors go back over there and they're looking around going, hey, something's wrong here. And it was a neighbor who calls 911 and said, I see a body. I hear children. And that's where all of this changed. Now, Joe, what we have been told thus far, and I'm really, really need you to, because the police are still asking for help. The police are saying, yeah, we've got, if you have information, if you have a camera, if you have video, if you were down this street, if you were, they're asking the community to step up. Do you know anything? Because, Joe, what are the odds a random thing like this is going to turn so violent against a husband and wife and leave the children alone? And it's going to happen, police say, between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. Now, going to go on an assumption here. They've been able to dial it into that based on all of our behaviors nowadays. They being investigators can determine pretty much when you went to sleep based on TV, video, your phone, things like
activity.
That. They can tell where you were, when you were. And so they've been able to isolate it down to this 3-hour window between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. January 2nd. We have a report, Joe, that Spencer was shot more than once and that Monique was shot once in the chest. If that is the only information we have about the interior of the house, and of course, knowing that the children were survived, because I'm going to guess the children were asleep. What does that tell your mind as an investigator? What does that speak to you about the crime scene? Just knowing that.
I'll tell you what it goes to. It goes to specific knowledge of not just the residents that occupied that house, but it also goes to the layout of that house. Whoever was involved has very intimate knowledge of the lives of this family. I wonder sometimes, Dave, I really do, as a forensics guy, I really wonder, is technology going to make us lazy investigators in the end? Because I look back on quote unquote, the good old days, when you really had to work hard to process a scene. And I'm not saying that people still don't do that. What I'm saying is that there are so many tools of the trade now. I really wonder if instinctually we're kind of burying our instincts relative to our reliance upon technology. And maybe that's a conversation for another day. But I'm leaning into this idea now that with the Tepe family, this is going to be a case that is going to be heavily, heavily influenced by technology. Maybe I ought to just record that on a loop. It seems like we keep saying that on a lot of cases that we cover. But with phones and cameras in particular, I'm thinking that that's going to be your first stop along the way. And the fact that they're looking for more, I think you said, Dave, the authorities are looking for more, any kind of imagery that they can get.
And that's the part I was really concerned with from the standpoint, we've got a couple here who, okay, maybe I'm jaded, but the minute I hear people talk about a couple, about how their lives are rooted in love for one another and the family, saying they're, I just want to share this with you. This is what family said. Brother-in-law says that they were known for their warmth, kindness, dedication to building a life rooted in love. They were extraordinary people whose lives were filled with love, joy, and deep connection to others. That's what the brother-in-law said. Now, one has to think, Joe, what don't we know? What don't we know about this couple that has a couple of small children? They're in their late 30s. He's a dentist. I mean, there's something we're missing, because this doesn't just happen for no reason. You have a home break-in or whatever. I get it. That's not this. We don't have somebody barging in, on a meth or crack binge, killing whatever they can and taking whatever they want. We've had nothing said about anything being stolen. We know that whoever came in and did this, Joseph Scott Morgan, was able to leave the doors locked as he or she left, because when neighbors came by, they couldn't get in. They could hear the children. And one of the neighbors actually said he heard the children screaming, and yet they couldn't get in. So whoever did this was able to shoot multiple times and lock the door as they exited. They weren't in a rush.
No, they weren't. And my question is that whoever perpetrated this, I'm really curious as to what was left behind in that house. The video that I have seen is there is a considerable amount of snow on the ground.
Right.
Okay. Snow, for my colleagues that work up north, I've never had to deal with it. I've only dealt with very few homicides that occurred when there was actually snow on the ground. I can hear my friends up north snickering right now as I say that. It's one of the things that I do know that they look for are going to be footprints. Now, I'm very curious as to however this person exited the house, if they got there soon enough. And I'm saying they, and this is good and bad. Just bear with me here. You've got all the colleagues that are showing up. What have they walked across out there? Okay. You've got LEO that showed up initially upon the initial call. Well, if they're doing a welfare check, one of the things that they'll do is they'll walk the perimeter of a house. That's kind of SOP for them. So what they want to do is they'll walk around and they'll look at windows. Well,
do they go and knock on the door first before they do that? Okay.
Yeah, they will. They'll bang on the door, as a matter of fact. Right. It's something that will get your attention.
Right.
Doorbell, they'll ring it, that sort of thing. I'm wondering if the cops did not hear the kids at that point in time, because maybe that initial jiggle of the lock, metaphorically here, wondering if that roused the children. And then, in the interim, think about how horrific that is. They might be fast asleep.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, they wake up as police coming by, and, suddenly they're faced with this horror. But, back to what I was saying with footprints and there's snow on the ground, I'm wondering, because the cops would have kind of made an orbit around the house, the exterior of the house. They would have looked at windows. They're not going to make entry. They might bang on a window to try to rouse somebody. I'm wondering if, first off, if it was a squad that rolled out, if you had 2 police officers there or if it's a single police officer. And then points of egress and ingress. Like, how do you leave this place? Do you walk out onto the street, down a sidewalk? Well, if you walk down the sidewalk, have the sidewalks been swept as far as snow goes? Have they, do they contain a lot of snow? Because look, we're talking about a period of time. This is a pristine time. We're talking about, I think you bracketed it, or they're bracketing it. You mentioned it from like 2 a.m.
Right.
They've kind of narrowed our spectrum down here. If there was more snow that fell during the night, that could have covered any footprints from the earlier in the day. So what you would have would be rather pristine, or you'd have the chance at having a pristine footprint.
Right.
Then you have workers that show up. They're walking around the place. They're peeking in windows and all this stuff. Are they touching anything with their bare hands externally? Doorknobs, because that's the first thing you do, right? If you can't get somebody to come to the door and you are hearing kids and you're hearing kids inside, my first inclination is to grab the door handle or the doorknob and kind of shake it. Well, if the individual made entry into the house that way, I'm not saying that you would have obliterated their print, but there's a chance that you may have overlaid a print with your own print, and maybe multiple people did this. I'm not blaming these people for it because they're literally being good Samaritans here. They're trying their best to check out their friend that's not responsive and his wife. So you have to check all the points of ingress, egress. Look for anything on the ground that could tie back to a specific person. And if you can get that narrowed, and if they find something that doesn't match up with everybody else, you can get a shoe size off of that. And maybe even not just a shoe size, you can get a footwear pattern. Or let me just put it to you this way. You can get the general overall pattern or classification of the shoe in addition to the shoe size. And beyond that, you can actually get a wear pattern off of a shoe, because you and I might wear the same size shoes and we could buy a pair of boots at the same time. But the way you step and the way I step are completely different. We're going to have different wear patterns. So that's another thing that you're going to look for in a case like this. So, and the reason I'm getting kind of down in the weeds with this is that right now they don't have anything.
Right.
They really don't, by their own admission. And I think that it's really important that you stay focused on that. Now, Dave, I got to tell you, when the reports that I'm hearing about what they found in that bedroom with these deceased parents, two of these things are not the same. I mean, you've got her, and she's sustained, according to what we're hearing, a single GSW to the chest.
Right.
All right. It's not what I'm hearing about him.
No. We're
talking multiple gunshot wounds. And I hate to, maybe it's overusage, but again, the term overkill comes into play here. Why is he perceived as the target in this particular case? Was the end game to kill him, and they don't see her as a threat? And then the children are unharmed. Because I got to tell you, if you've got a mad killer out there, let's just say you've got like some psychopath that's running the streets that is just howling at the moon out of their mind. They don't care if you're an adult or a child.
Right.
All right. It's indiscriminate. They're going to waste everybody. Again, back to Piketon. That was one of the real interesting things about Piketon is that you had all these dead adults, but nobody killed a child.
That was, that has stayed with me because of how you described all that. And here we've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Yeah.
We've got very small children here. And when you were talking about maybe not being awakened during the 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. time, gunshot might not wake you. But you know what? I remember back in the day living in an apartment.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
And having my downstairs neighbors, the cops showed up.
Yeah.
And the banging on that door had me going to my door thinking somebody was, And so knowing how they bang on a door to get attention from somebody, that would wake up a child. And
I would think so. I would think so, depending upon. But, this is a larger structure. I think it's multi-storied. So I don't know. But, there's a way that you and I might knock, but there's the way cops knock is completely different, for a variety of reasons. They're there to kind of shock you, I think, many times. They're there to try to get your attention, and they're there because they got other calls pressing. They want to get this done and over with as expeditiously as possible. That's just a human truth right there. But there's back to the environment in which the bodies are found. I find the nature of the injuries that are sustained by both of the Tepes intriguing. But here's what I do know. I know that there are 2 big pieces of evidence here that literally might lead us to the perpetrator. So, Dave, where does the science lead us here? Where exactly are we going to find the answers in the world of forensics? Well, I think, aside from, kind of the things that we would generally think about relative to fiber evidence, any kind of transfer evidence, there doesn't seem to be, and again, we don't know this completely, there doesn't seem to necessarily be an indication of a struggle like contact. This, I got to tell you, this feels more like an execution.
No forced entry, Joe.
Yeah, no forced entry.
How do you have no forced entry between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning with a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old? I'm sorry, you can't get in my house at that time without there being some force.
Oh yeah, there has to be mine as well. I can't.
Oh, by the way, if you come into my house between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., you're gonna die.
Yeah,
just letting you know ahead of time. If you anybody,
well, before I decide to do that, can you let me know what's in the refrigerator? Is there anything in there?
Yeah, that's why you'll die. Where do you think I hide my guns and gold?
There you go.
But I'm bothered by a couple of things here, Joe. We mentioned early on that we have the husband, Mr. Tepe, is shot multiple times while his wife is shot one time. Now, I'm reading a report here that says officers that entered the home found both individuals deceased, 3 spent 9mm casings discovered at the scene. Of course, the children unharmed, but when I'm thinking multiple gunshot wounds on a person, I'm not thinking 2. I'm not thinking, granted, that does qualify as more than 1.
Yeah.
But 3 shell casings does not. I'm thinking pop, 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 several times in multiple parts of the body, and then shooting her once in the chest.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing because the term, and I don't know if this is necessarily, I don't know if this is something that is, the origin is with the police in the framing, or if it's something that's been made up to be a bit more salacious on the part of the media.
Oh, God.
Because this thing, this case is like wildfire right now. It's everywhere. And, got to get them clicks, man.
Yeah.
And so, I'm with you. Most of the time when I hear multiple and I hear, and there have been people that have stated the word overkill. I'm not the first person to say this. Well, what are our options here? Well, I think one of the biggest things that we have to concern ourselves with is, did the individual fumble about in the dark? Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
Before I go with fumbling, the idea is, do the number of holes or defects in the body marry up with the number of spent casings that we have?
Right.
So if we've got multiple entrance wounds, which can be proven that are entrance wounds by the medical examiner, we don't have that information yet. And there's a whole segment of that we could do, talking about the attitude of the bodies relative to the perpetrator, the shooter, and the victims. Do you have enough casings there at the scene that would marry up with the number of defects in the body? I think that's going to be quite compelling. Because if not, did this person fumble about in the dark and try to pick up spent brass? That's a big question that you have to ask. Depending upon the platform, the handgun platform, and this is going to be a semi-automatic weapon. We're talking about a 9mm parabellum probably round.
Is that going to give is that going to make a lot of noise, Joe?
Well, yeah, unless of course it's suppressed. And
never silenced, friends. Suppressed. Okay.
Yeah, suppressed. You can never silence a weapon. I hate that term. Yeah. It's a suppressor that is on these weapons. I hate it when people say silencer, because you're suppressing, you're knocking down the sound. All right. You're talking about something that is, that's probably supersonic, and supersonic means that it cracks the sound barrier. So when it cracks the sound barrier, you hear a crack in the air. All right. This little explosion. So what are they looking at? A suppressed weapon, and that's going to affect the ballistics of the weapon itself, or the ballistics of the weapon and the external ballistics of the round that is fired into the body. It's not going to change.
Are they going to be able to tell that from the shell casings they found?
No, because the suppressor would have nothing to do with the ejected casing, because the ejected casing is coming out of the port on the top of the slide. So every time that weapon is discharged, the slide actually jacks forward or racks backwards, and it grabs. There's actually an extractor. It's a mechanism inside of the barrel of the weapon, or in the barrel housing adjacent to the barrel, and it grabs that spent cartridge and casts it out. And while it's doing that, the slide is slamming forward all the while from the magazine that's in the grip. It's spring loaded, so it's pushing another live round in, and this happens in the twinkling of an eye. I urge, don't believe me. I mean, assume I'm lying. I urge anybody, and of course, I'm kind of a nerd. I could watch these sorts of things on YouTube all the time. Go to super slow-mo images of semi-automatic handguns being fired, and you'll see the ejection process, and it's really fascinating. You can get an idea. And think about ejection of brass. Is unpredictable. Okay. Now, and a lot of that is dependent upon the shooter, how they're holding the weapon. But even the strongest among us that are firing a weapon, you're going to deal with some type of recoil event, might be minimal, and you actually have to readjust. You have to readjust your hand every time if you're trying to keep it on target. It can be in a minuscule way, but you have to readjust, and you're moving too. Okay, you're moving at the same time. So this brass is being spent out into the air, and then it's unpredictable when it strikes the ground. So if they had like a hardwood floor, if they had marble or some other kind of stone that's got grout, if they've got carpet, okay, or carpets on the floor, like rugs, that's going to affect the distribution of this. Then you factor in the cylindrical shape of the brass and, what edge is it going to hit? Okay. Wow. So there are all these factors that come in with the distribution of brass. There's never anybody that ever tells you, well, yeah, I can look at the amount of brass that's right here and tell you specifically where they're lying.
Right.
They're lying. That's an empirical improbability. Now, if you're in a military world and you're dealing with a you're dealing with a belt-fed, machine gun.
Right.
Okay. And you're in a static position. Even those big bits of brass that are coming out of that, though they'll be kind of gathered in one, there's no way, like you could sit there. It's like flipping a coin.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Bang somewhere else.
Yeah. You can't do that. So
let me ask you about this though, Joe. What are the odds that somebody that is in there to do this kind of carnage? Okay. Yeah. I mean, I cannot think that they went in there for a glass of milk, got startled, and decided to kill 2 people and in the middle of the night. So I'm going to assume they were there with purpose and leaving 3 shells behind, shell casings behind. What are the odds that they picked up others? Yeah, I know. And that was the big thing I was getting at. Forgive my senility, because I was talking about fumbling around in the dark. I start talking about all these things that we talk about in forensics, and I forget many times. But yeah, if you have an awareness that you're going to leave brass behind, and you understand that the extractor mark that I was talking about, remember we talked about this in Delphi with the extraction mark that was left behind when he racked that SIG back. Right. If they understand that concept, they might fumble around in the dark and try to pick up all the spent brass. And I've had brass that I have recovered in bedrooms underneath the bed, even though the weapon was fired outside, of the bed. It wasn't like somebody was firing under the bed. It's literally, I've had brass bounce off of things and go behind furniture and into closets and all manner of things like this. So did the person have the wherewithal, or did they just want to get out of there quickly? Did they want to illuminate the space after what they had done? Because Dave, big reveal here, I think that this person knew them. I don't think that this is, and maybe I'll be proved wrong. I don't know. But you're going to tell me, universal you, not you. I know. You're going to tell me that just out of random, let's pick a name. Yeah. I'm going to walk in and I'm going to essentially execute 2 people in their bed, leave their kids alive. And I know exactly where their bedroom is. I'm not going to make a mess while I'm there. And I'm going to go out of the house sight unseen. You're going to tell me that that's what's happened. Yeah. And we don't have any indication that anything of value was taken. No. Nothing at all. So that, What else have you learned about the bedroom? Anything else besides that we've got a man with multiple gunshot wounds and a woman with 1? Anything else? No, not to the best of my knowledge. Unless Joe's been on every show. No, Joseph Scott Morgan is on every show. I mean, they've been not bugging. They've been calling you since this broke to get you on. And I think it's because there is so little information. I mean, the cops are still asking the neighborhood for help. Yeah, they are. But here's my big, I think that the ballistics evidence is going to be significant in this case. Particularly if that weapon has ever been used in the perpetration of a crime. Right. Was he targeted by somebody like, here's some money, go do this? Oh, wow. Okay. Well, if that's the case, if, you get the ATF involved in this thing and they start looking at these recovered rounds, which they will recover the rounds, they'll either be recovered out of the body or have been recovered out of the bodies, or they've been recovered out of that mattress. Either way, they're going to get recovered. Don't fool yourself. Do we know if they were standing or laying down when they were shot? It's completely unclear at this point in time, and I understand why it is, because they don't want to reveal a lot. But here's the big thing that got released. Literally, this is what you were talking about. This is what I've been called about by some other media platforms and wanted me to comment on them. Is this alley camera that they have. You say, well, Morgan, what does that mean? Why are you saying an alley camera? Well, the image that we're seeing, the police are interested in speaking to this person. I'll put it to you that way. Okay. Yeah. This area is behind the house or behind the area. It's not out on the main drag. Called an alleyway. Called an alleyway. And you've got an image of a subject that looks like a male. They're moving
as you're looking at the screen, they would be moving from right to left. They are walking in snow. You had taken a look at it, Dave, and you said, this person might be a little gimpy, not really sure. And I got to thinking about that. I don't know how you walk in snow. I don't walk well in snow.
Well, I was looking at that. I'm not seeing the snow that deep. I'm seeing icy areas.
It looks like it's piled up on the sides. And again, I don't really know.
Yeah.
And Columbus sits right there on that snow line. I know I'll get my friends in Ohio that say, it's not on the snow line, but it's right there on that snow line, where it can get really, really bad, or, can stay like Southern Ohio. And I'm wondering how much snow had fallen and how, with what was the impact of that area. Maybe I'm making too much out of that, but
I think you have to make everything out of everything.
You have to, because there's nothing to really hang your hat on right now.
See, I saw him looking down while he was walking. He's wearing a hat, he's looking down, and I'm seeing a lumbering side to side. That's what I'm seeing in that. And I'm thinking how my grandson makes fun of the way I walk. Yeah. And I don't realize it. And I'm wondering, was this guy intentionally walking a certain way? Was he trying to be deliberately relaxed? Because, to be honest with you, Joe, if you're walking in an alleyway between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., at the same time, a couple is murdered, you're not getting away with this. You're not walking away. You are the person they want, and they're going to look for clothes. They're going to find that hat. They're going to find everything. And I'm just wondering, what the heck? Why don't we already have, in this day and age, you're going to tell me that's the only video we've got?
No,
that's
it can't be. There's got to be ring cams. And this is something else Kimmy and I were talking about the other day about these flock cameras that they're called, that cities have set up all over the place. I'm wondering if there are any flock cameras that have been installed that are in proximity to this location that the city has been able to pull. Now, I would think that if they had clear video, because remember, we got to go back to the beginning. What they're saying is, we need your help. If they had really clear video at this point in time, they would say, we're looking for this guy. Look how clear that is. But even there's a couple of things here I got to break down real quickly. So the idea that how the person is dressed, they're obviously dressed for cool weather. They've got a hood over their head, and it looks like something might be under the hood. Okay. I don't know if that is maybe a watch cap, like a toboggan, or if it's some kind of other cap that's covered with the hood. And Dave, if you look at the mouth area, I swear it's covered. I've got a screenshot. One of the news agencies sent it to me, and they said, "Hey, look at this and tell me what you see." And it was hard to make out the screenshot that they sent me. It looks as though it could be one of those damn masks they made everybody wear, back during the pandemic. I can't remember the name of the N, whatever. It doesn't matter. But anyway, is it that? And the mask looks dark as well. Mm-hmm. And I know that I've seen masks like that. Or then we've got the balaclava thing that could come into, where we heard that before, that could come into play, and it's covering. You can see kind of the eyes, but the head is always the head stays pitched down. Yeah. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, for me, I don't know about you, but when I go to a big city or even a medium-sized city, I'm not aware where the alleys are. No, I have no idea where alleys are. I drive by houses. I see the houses. If you ask me, did you see the alley behind the house? No, because it's behind the house. I did not see it. I'm not familiar with that. Okay. I go to New Orleans. There's a lot of alleyways in New Orleans because the streets are so tight. So you've got these alleyways that people actually pull their garbage. In some of the older neighborhoods, they'll pull their garbage out to the alleyway and the truck goes down it. You never see it on the front of the house. So, but you have to know that, Dave. The reason I'm saying this is that this guy is in obscura. I think that he is purposed here. Yep. He's not going to walk down the streets. He's aware that the alley is there. He's kind of guarded. He's as best he can do it. He's covered, and he's walking down the alleyway, head pitched down, and it's the alleyway. He's not walking down the street to get away. Right. So I'm wondering if this is somebody that has been watching this house, or somebody that's been there for a party, or someone that has noticed them, or somebody that owes somebody money, or somebody that's interested in the family and their lives. I don't know. But this person had an awareness of this environment. I think that's, at least to me, it seems kind of obvious. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree. I'm watching this over and over again, and we got basically 3 clips of the video of him walking, maybe 4. Anyway, there's one where he's actually, it's right before you get to see the back of him, and he's actually looking down, and he pulls his hat down. He pulls it down a little bit further. It's just, I think you're right, because common sense dictates that, you're in a home that has 2 sleeping adults, 2 children, and you kill the adults, leave the children alone. You don't take anything. You lock the doors as you leave because nobody can get in. So no forced entry, lock them behind you. I mean, this has got to be somebody who knows what they're doing, knows who they're doing and why. Now, the question is, what are we going to uncover? And I hate to say this about the All-American couple, because that's what's going to happen now. Somebody's going to come up and say, well, Yeah, no.
And that's dude, that is standard fare in all of these cases. And sometimes, there's information there, but sometimes, again, it's clickbait and they wind up doing a character assassination on the people. And I hope that that's not the case. I hope that people will remain focused. It's not like anybody has an excuse for that anymore. We've been doing this for a long, long time. There's certain ways people should understand. There's certain ways investigations are handled. And people can speculate. That's fine. But you have to be real, real careful about how you go about doing this and getting information out there. I think that I'm hoping that within the next couple of days, they're going to recover more videography, perhaps of adjacent ring cams and whatever, brand is out there that can bring something to bear. Again, maybe there was a Tesla on the street. I have no idea. But let me say this to you, friends. If you, and I don't normally do this on these cases because Dave and I primarily, we focus most of the time on adjudicated cases. I feel compelled to tell you this. There's Crime Stoppers number for Columbus, Ohio. And let me give you that number real quick. It's area code 614-461-8477. And you can submit a tip there. And they're not going to ask for your name or contact information. That number again is 614-461-8477. And let me go one step further that I don't normally do, because this is really on my heart. If you're a praying person, I ask that anybody out there that keep these children in your prayers tonight. I probably ought to close out every show like that involves kids, but this is really tugging on my heart this evening because I feel for this family and what they're going through. And hopefully, with the public's help, if possible, they're going to put a bag over this person really, really quick and get them off the streets and dig into this and hold somebody accountable for this horror. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.